Guys, welcome to Compliance with Kudzai. I hope if you're a newbie to this channel, and this happens to be your first video, then you get locked in, you enjoy the content, and you do the right thing and press that subscribe button and the notification button so that you always know when I upload a new a new video. And for everybody who is already part of this family and has been enjoying the content, thank you for your continued to support. This video today is going to be about the consequences, the impact of non-compliance. A lot of people, are like, okay, we need to comply with the laws and regulations, codes, business standards, all of that. But what happens when we don't comply? What is the consequence? So that's what we are going to be talking about today. And I'm going to share some information with you that you can hopefully take further into your role, your job, your environment that you're working in, and just be able to think about impacts and consequences a lot more clearly and have a better appreciation for why it's actually important to comply. Besides the fact that it's the right thing to do, there could be potential impacts for your business. Okay. So when compliance goes wrong, it means that we have a law or a regulation that we as a business are supposed to comply with, and for some reason have not been able to do so, or have in very bad circumstances intentionally avoided doing so. Or maybe there was some negligence, someone forgot to press a button, I don't know, whatever the case is, you know that now you have a non-compliance event or a breach of a regulatory requirement. Sometimes this can be a minor breach. For example, you were supposed to file a report with your regulator yesterday and you ended up sending it today. For whatever reason, the reminder on your system didn't go off. Then what the regulator might do, if it's a minor infraction like that, they might just issue you with a warning and say, make sure you submit on time. If you do this 2-3 times, then you will end up getting a fine or a penalty. Or depending on your history and relationship with your regulator, you might get a small fine right there on the spot. And a lot of the consequences that you might face as an organization for non-compliance are also going to depend on what is the regulatory attitude, environment at that particular time. Is this an infraction, a breach that relates to something that is a focus area for the regulator at that particular time? Are they wanting to send a clear message to market participants, industry participants, that, you know what, we've got a zero tolerance? So even if it's something small where you might say, oh, this is something where we will get a small fine, you find yourself getting a lot more than a slap on the wrist because you are being used as an example by the regulator. So always keep that in mind, that it's not going to be hard and fast rule at all times, that small infraction equals small fine or slap on the wrist. It could be that the regulator wants to send a clear message to the industry about what their position is around late filing or whatever the case is. So they go a little bit harder on you as a result of that. So let's move a little bit away from minor infractions. Like I said, you might get a warning, you might get a small fine, depending on what's going on with the regulator. But let's move to a situation where we're talking more about your major non-compliance issues. So for example, in the AML space, if you as an organization have had the regulator coming into your business and saying you need to fix your controls for transaction monitoring, for example, and you haven't done that, and they've come in again during an oversight visit and found that your controls are still deficient and not satisfactory to them, they will then say that, you know what, this is a major violation, potentially even if you haven't actually had any transactions of a money laundering nature going through, but the fact that you have a control failing that they've spoken to you about, and this has happened in real life, I won't mention names, then they would issue you with a massive fine potentially. So it could be millions of rands. They could also come and say that we're going to now do a lot more supervisory activities within your business. Instead of coming once or twice a year or every 2 years. We're now going to be coming to check on you every quarter. So enhanced supervision by the regulator would be something that your business might also have to face. And if, for example, your failing is something that has resulted in customer detriment, they can say that you need to put the customers back in the position that they would have been in had this non-compliance event not happened. So you need to be prepared to allocate some funds to pay for that as well. And any fines along the way that the regulator might say you need to pay as a result of your control failing, non-compliance with a regulatory requirement. Something else that you need to consider is the reputational damage that you can expect as a result of that, because a lot of the time the regulator will issue a statement and the media will get to hear about this incident and your brand will be impacted, that XYZ company, incorporated bank, whatever the case is, failed in this regard, and as a result, we're issuing a fine of 10 million, 30 million, 120 million, however big the fine ends up being, to them as a result of this failing. And then you have to see how the market reacts to that. And maybe customers are like, oh, okay, we don't like what they've done. They're not feeling so comfortable about doing business with your organization anymore. So there is an impact of that reputational damage as well. So something else that you need to think about is remediation. The regulator may prescribe remediation action. So in the example around, deficiencies in the control environment, the regulator may say, right, as a result of this, we expect you to fix 1, 2, 3 things, do them in this way by such and such a date. And as they come back again in that increased enhanced supervisory approach that they'll now be applying to you, they'll be keeping track of you and making sure, or expecting you to do a lot more reporting on your progress towards fixing the issues. And you don't want to find yourself in a position where, as you're reporting back, it's, oh, we haven't yet fixed this, we haven't yet done this, we're behind schedule on this, because that's just going to upset, annoy the regulator and make them feel that maybe you're not quite serious about the remediation action that you need to be taking. So again, increased supervision, high fines and penalties applicable to the business, reputational damage as well that could apply to the organization and maybe impact, whether new customers are going to want to do business with them or existing customers are going to want to stay with them. And then, of course, looking at the potential of, just generally bad implications to your business. Not pretty. Okay, so we've talked about what happens when you've got minor infractions, potentially a slap on the wrist, and then we talked about, what happens when something major happens. But the next step is what happens when there is a gross violation resulting from either intentionally violating and not implementing a regulatory requirement, just flouting them outright, decisions being made in that regard, or there has been gross negligence. And we've seen a lot of this taking place in sort of like the environmental kind of spaces. So when you think of, things that have happened with oil and gas companies or in the mining industry, where they have failed to comply with certain environmental laws and requirements on waste disposal and maintaining the air quality, for example, then serious impacts have been and consequences have been placed on the business as a result of that. So what does it look like when something like that happens? You can find a business's operating license being suspended by the regulator. And they say, you know what, clearly you do not respect the regulations and the requirements that apply to you, so we're suspending your license, which can be catastrophic, detrimental to a business if they can survive it for 3 months, 2 months, whatever the case is, or suspension of your operating license within a specific area. So if it's a financial institution, that might be around trading, for example, in particular entities, but the rest of your business's license continues to operate. But then worst case scenario, they might say you aren't allowed to operate at all. We are withdrawing your banking license. We are withdrawing your permissions to operate or mine in a certain area because, you know, you didn't put in place the necessary safety protocols that are required to make sure that you are operating and looking after the community and not polluting the air so that none of us can breathe, and the ambient air quality has been reduced. So it's really about, you know, catastrophic business consequences when we're talking about gross negligence or, you know, complete flouting of critical regulations by a business. Obviously, there can also still be financial penalties. These would be immense. The requirement to compensate, let's say, communities, if we're talking about the environmental thing, if they've an organization has polluted the water source for the community in the area, they're going to have to remediate that and compensate the people that potentially maybe got sick as a result and deal with their medical bills if something like that has taken place. So, you know, those are all the liabilities that the business are going to have to take on board and address as part of the remediation and cleaning of the environment. Remember when there was the oil spill in the ocean by a certain company, they had to spend millions and millions of dollars to clean that up and try to fix that situation as best as they could. And then speaking of, that's the liability of the company, but in certain instances, the senior management, the board of that entity could also be held personally in their own capacity liable based on the decisions that they made, whether they said, oh, we're not going to report this, or we're just going to use substandard material and, you know, to save costs, and it results in a septic dam bursting where waste material is contained and there's a pollution incident, something like that, where they have taken decisions that were not the right decisions to save a penny, save a pound, and ended up flouting regulations as a result, then it means that they could potentially be held personally liable for the consequences, which means out of your own pocket, not the company paying for you, but the individuals themselves having to pay fines and penalties. And in some instances, prison time can also be incorporated into that punishment, where they say the chief executive officer could face 8 years of imprisonment, 10 years of imprisonment, depending on the nature of the violation that is being talked about. So various serious consequences can be met. And of course, the market impact. If you're a listed company, the value of your company can drop immensely as the market responds negatively to things like gross misconduct, gross violations of regulatory requirements, and regulators taking stern action against you as an organization. And that in itself can lead to the demise of the business itself. So as you can tell from all of that, there's differences between a minor violation, a major violation, but you know, you can absorb it nonetheless. Some businesses actually make provision on their balance sheets for stuff like that. And then there's the catastrophic gross misconduct where, you know, it's no longer just about being able to absorb a fine or a penalty. It's really about, you know, harsh action being taken up against the business or against the, you know, management and governing body of that business. So when we're talking about impacts and consequences of non-compliance, when you're looking at your risk assessment, and if you haven't watched my video on compliance risk assessment, make sure that you do that and you'll be able to contextualize what I'm saying. But as part of your compliance risk assessment, one of the things that you need to do is to be able to assess the potential impact of a non-compliance event, a breach of a specific requirement when you are risk assessing a regulatory requirement. So these are all of the things that you can be thinking about. Is the impact going to be a minor impact and that will get a slap on the wrist, major but not, you know, life-threatening, or is this something that will completely be catastrophic? Business will no longer cease to exist if we do that. And therefore, it will also determine the nature of the controls that you're going to put in place to manage that risk event and ensure that it doesn't happen. So Let me know your thoughts on consequences of non-compliance. What have you experienced potentially in your organization where you're working as a compliance officer in terms of different responses from your regulator? And regulatory authorities have different approaches. Some might be hardline, and the smallest thing will get you a catastrophic result. And some in different jurisdictions might be a little bit more understanding. And another important point to note is that your relationship with your regulator can influence to a certain extent the level of impact of a non-compliance event to your business. So if you have an open and honest and communicative and collaborative relationship with your regulator, and you cooperate with them at all times, they are likely to understand your business and realize that actually this was an error. Again, this is assuming you're not talking about gross violations and flouting of regulations. This was an error. The management is a good management team. This is just something that was a result of an oversight. They're more likely to lean towards understanding the non-compliance event and doing corrective and remediation action with you as a business than if you have a reputation of being hiding things from your regulators, being non-cooperative, it's always, shady, for lack of a better term. Then, when things go wrong, they might not be so receptive and, inclined to be understanding to things. So make sure that you are also focused on having a positive relationship with your regulators so you can work through non-compliance events as and when they arise. But that's enough from me, guys. I'm excited to carry on sharing with you and engaging with you. So do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, don't forget to subscribe. Looking forward to carrying on with this family relationship with you guys in the future. And I'll see you again soon. I won't be a stranger. Bye.